The sky was split open as the massive Imperial fleet descended upon Earth, their warships, like jagged mountains in the heavens, blocking out the sun entirely. The sight was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. No one knew what to do. No one could even begin to understand what was happening. The ships were so large they cast shadows across entire cities. The people on the ground stared up in awe and fear as they waited for the inevitable attack. In an instant, the atmosphere seemed to tremble, the air crackling with the energy of hundreds of ships descending at once. The ground shook beneath the feet of those standing in the streets, and buildings began to rattle. Windows shattered from the shockwave. But it was all too much, too fast, and in a world so peaceful, no one could believe this was happening. As the ships hovered above the cities, their engines pulsing with power, the metallic bodies of the fleet reflected the sun's light, creating a surreal scene of burning brilliance. People in the streets ran into buildings or took cover wherever they could, but no one knew where to run. No one knew what would come next. The fear spread like wildfire through the cities. Then came the first broadcast from the Imperial fleet. It wasn't a message of peace or demand. It was a sound, an eerie mechanical hum broadcast directly into the minds of everyone who could hear it. It spoke no words, only that hum. And within seconds, the world knew it was not a normal sound. It was a signal to prepare for something much worse. Earth's leaders scrambled to respond. Military forces were mobilized across the globe, air defenses and missile silos activated in rapid succession. But even as the world's governments acted swiftly, they could feel the hopelessness in the air, because they knew they were facing something unlike anything they had ever seen before. They had no time to understand their enemy's technology, no time to comprehend what these beings wanted. All they knew was that they had to act fast or perish. On the ground, small groups of soldiers were seen gathering in secret to prepare for the worst, but there were whispers of doubt even among them. How could they stand a chance against ships the size of mountains, against weapons that could obliterate entire cities in the blink of an eye? They could not know then that the most powerful weapon they possessed had already been quietly deployed. It was not a weapon of destruction, nor one that could be launched from a silo. It was the human spirit and the will to survive. As the ships began to settle into orbit over major cities across the planet, the tension in the air grew unbearable. The world held its breath as the first wave of invaders began to descend from the ships. They dropped like raindrops from the sky. Only these were no ordinary soldiers. Their armor was sleek and gleaming, their weapons terrifyingly advanced, and they were coming straight for the Earth below. But what the invaders did not expect was that Earth was not as vulnerable as they thought. Beneath the surface, the military had prepared hidden technologies that had been kept secret for decades, and when the time came to strike, the world would reveal a power that the invaders could not even imagine. Just as the alien forces made their first steps onto Earth's soil, something strange happened. Their ships began to shake, their weapons malfunctioned. The first wave of soldiers froze mid-step, confused by the sudden change in their surroundings. Something was happening, but no one could yet understand what was causing it. The invaders were not the only ones who were prepared. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and humanity would not go down quietly. The alien invaders were not prepared for the sudden shift in the atmosphere. Their ships had barely settled into position when the first wave of their soldiers began to descend to Earth's surface. They were expecting chaos, fear, and disorder, but instead they were met with an eerie stillness, a tension that hung in the air like the calm before a storm. As the first drop pods hit the ground, they released a blinding flash of light, followed by the sound of heavy boots hitting Earth's soil. The soldiers emerged tall and imposing, their armor gleaming under the sun, their weapons ready. But as they took their first steps, they realized the ground beneath them felt different. The air seemed thicker. Somehow they couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The invaders moved quickly, their purpose clear: to overwhelm and conquer. But as they advanced, they began to notice something that wasn't in their intelligence reports. Earth's military did not retreat or panic in the face of overwhelming odds. Instead, they stood their ground and waited. The soldiers saw at first a flash in the distance, and then another, followed by the unmistakable sound of weapons firing. A few seconds later, the first wave of invaders fell. The alien forces stood in disbelief. Their soldiers had been cut down in seconds by an enemy they had not seen. They had been prepared for resistance, but not for the swift and deadly response they were encountering. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. They had underestimated Earth. They had underestimated humanity. The Earth's military had been waiting for this moment for years. Their soldiers stood in well-coordinated lines, the first of them armed with plasma rifles that crackled with energy, every shot striking its target with lethal precision. Behind them, drones took to the air, each one a sleek and silent hunter targeting the alien forces. With pinpoint accuracy, the invaders' weapons fired, but they seemed ineffective against the powerful shields that had been silently activated. The energy blasts bounced harmlessly off Earth's defense systems, as though they were nothing more than raindrops against a steel wall. The invaders' commanders in orbit watched in horror as their forces were decimated in real time. Their initial confidence quickly turned to panic. They had assumed that Earth's technology would be primitive, that they would be able to crush any resistance with ease. But now they realized how wrong they were. Earth's technology was unlike anything they had encountered before. It was advanced beyond anything they could have prepared for. On the ground, the battle raged on, with Earth's forces pushing back the invaders at every turn. Soldiers moved with the speed and precision of a well-oiled machine, while drones hovered overhead, delivering devastating strikes on the alien forces. From all angles, the invaders tried to regroup, but every attempt was thwarted before it could gain any real momentum. The alien commanders quickly realized they were facing an enemy far more organized and deadly than they had ever imagined. Their forces were scattered and disoriented. Every attempt to break through Earth's defenses failed as the tide of the battle shifted in Earth's favor. As the dust of the initial assault began to settle, the invaders realized they had no plan for this. They had no backup, no immediate reinforcements to call upon. All they had was the fleet above, and the soldiers they had already deployed on the ground. But the Earth was not going to fall so easily, not today, not ever. The first wave was a brutal reminder that humanity would not surrender without a fight. The invaders were in for more than they had bargained for. As the first wave of invaders lay in ruins, the remaining soldiers began to regroup with hastily drawn plans. Their commanders tried to issue orders, but communication between the various units had broken down. It was as if the very air was conspiring against them. Every move they made was met with more resistance, more unexpected and terrifying firepower from the humans, who seemed to know their every move before they made it. The invaders attempted to fire back with greater force, bringing down energy shields and blasting the ground with explosive artillery, but Earth's defenses adapted with eerie precision. Electromagnetic barriers shimmered into existence just moments before the alien blasts reached their targets, and the Earth's soldiers fired back from concealed positions with expert accuracy, sending alien forces into disarray. The Empire's commanders were baffled. From their vantage point, high above the battlefield, they could see everything, but it made no sense. Their weapons should have been enough to tear through anything the humans could throw at them. But instead, their forces were being decimated with such speed, it was as if the Earth itself had become their enemy. In response, the invaders began deploying heavy war mechs, towering machines of war that stomped across the ground like giants, crushing anything in their path. But the humans weren't intimidated by the massive machines. They merely adapted their tactics. Within seconds, the Earth's forces released a new wave of weapons designed specifically for these colossal threats. Specialized anti-mech drones shot across the battlefield with pinpoint accuracy, disabling the war machines one by one as their heavily armored shells were torn open by focused energy blasts. The alien commanders, who had once boasted of their technology's superiority, now found themselves watching in helpless awe as their mechs fell before Earth's weapons. They scrambled to reorganize their forces, but it was clear their advantage was slipping with every passing minute. Meanwhile, on the ground, Earth's soldiers moved with calm precision, working together in perfect synchronization. Each unit knew exactly what to do. Each member understood their role. They had been trained for this moment, and now they were executing their strategy flawlessly. As the battle unfolded, it became increasingly clear to the invaders that their weapons and tactics were no match for the humans, who had been quietly preparing for decades. Earth's commanders had long suspected that one day they would face an enemy from the stars, and they had spent years developing technology and secret technology, far beyond anything the invaders had even begun to fathom. While the Imperial forces had been focused on conquering worlds and expanding their empire, Earth had focused on survival, on ensuring that no matter the enemy, no matter the odds, humanity would always have a fighting chance. And now that chance had arrived. Despite their overwhelming numbers and superior firepower, the invaders could not overcome the combined strength of humanity's defenses. The Empire's forces were scattered, their ranks thinning as their units were picked off one by one. Even their most advanced weaponry seemed useless against Earth's shields and counterattacks. The Empire's commanders began to realize they were facing something they had never expected. They had come to conquer, but what they were finding was a world that would not fall easily. On the ground, the tides of the battle had shifted entirely. Earth's forces were on the offensive, pushing forward with relentless determination. The invaders' lines buckled and then broke, their morale shattered as they realized they were being driven back by a foe they could not understand nor defeat. The tide had turned, and Earth's victory was becoming inevitable. As the invaders' forces faltered on the battlefield, their commanders were faced with a crushing realization: they had underestimated humanity. Not just in terms of technology, but in terms of strategy and resilience. The initial shock of their arrival had worn off, and what had been a decisive invasion was quickly turning into a costly struggle. The Empire's commanders had prepared for many scenarios, but none of them included a force that could adapt so quickly or fight so fiercely. And just when the invaders thought things couldn't get worse, the Earth's forces revealed their most devastating surprise: a weapon that had been kept hidden for years in the deepest underground bunkers across the planet. Genetically engineered soldiers bred to fight and defeat extraterrestrial invaders. They were the perfect blend of human intellect and alien combat prowess. Their abilities had been fine-tuned through decades of research and experimentation, and now they would make their debut. These soldiers were not just regular humans. They were enhanced beyond normal human limits in strength, speed, and agility, each one capable of taking down an entire squad of invaders with nothing more than their bare hands. They wore sleek black armor that blended into the shadows, making them nearly invisible in the chaos of battle. Their weapons were precision tools of destruction designed for maximum efficiency, and when they were deployed, they moved like shadows through the ranks of the invaders, striking swiftly and without mercy. The first time one of these bioengineered soldiers appeared on the battlefield, the alien invaders barely knew what hit them. The soldier appeared in the middle of a group of invaders, and in the span of a few seconds, their advanced weapons did nothing to stop the soldier's relentless assault. A plasma rifle discharged point-blank into the soldier's chest, but the energy beam was absorbed by the armor as if it were nothing more than a spark. Then the soldier moved faster than any of the invaders could react, tearing through them with brutal precision, using nothing but hand-to-hand combat. The invaders tried to fight back, but their weapons were useless against the bio-soldier's enhancements. Each attack from an invader was easily dodged or countered before the soldier delivered a lethal blow. The invaders' ranks began to crumble under the relentless assault of these super soldiers who seemed almost unstoppable. The alien commanders in orbit were horrified. They had never seen anything like it. They had thought their invincible forces would overwhelm Earth, but now they were faced with something that was not only surviving, but thriving in this brutal conflict. The soldiers of Earth were no longer simply fighting back. They were hunting down the invaders with relentless determination. Earth's military leaders were watching from their command centers as their bioengineered soldiers tore through the enemy lines. They knew that these enhanced warriors were the key to victory. They had designed them to be the ultimate counter to an invading force, and now they were proving their worth tenfold. Each bio-soldier seemed to have been born for this very moment. Their movements were fluid and fast, their attacks surgical and deadly. The invaders' weapons bounced off their advanced armor like raindrops on a steel roof. As the invaders' forces were broken apart by these new soldiers, they began to retreat in chaos. The alien commanders issued orders to pull back, but it was clear the damage had been done. The Earth forces had gained a foothold that could not be removed, and the invaders' once proud offensive was now teetering on the brink of collapse. The appearance of the bioengineered soldiers was a turning point in the battle. The invaders had made one fatal mistake. They had underestimated the one thing humanity always had on its side: its ingenuity and its will to survive. The moment the bioengineered soldiers made their presence known, the battlefield shifted from a struggle of numbers to a contest of will. The invaders' forces were no longer the aggressive attackers they had once been. They were scrambling, disoriented, and fearful of the unknown threat. They had never expected these super soldiers to be so powerful, and now they faced an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. Earth's forces seized the opportunity to press their advantage. The invaders tried to regroup and reorganize, but the humans were already ahead of them. Their tactics were flawless, their coordination unmatched. The Earth military operated like a single entity, working together, as if they could read each other's minds. The invaders were no longer the predators, they were the prey, and every step they took was met with precise retaliation. Drones filled the sky now more than ever before. The small but lethal machines darted across the battlefield, delivering strikes with pinpoint accuracy, while also providing surveillance for Earth's forces. The invaders' communications were constantly disrupted by electromagnetic pulses that interfered with their coordination. Every time they tried to regroup, they were bombarded by devastating artillery strikes from Earth's forces already entrenched in hidden positions. The invaders had attempted to use their war mechs once again, but now they found themselves up against new Earth weapons that could easily dismantle the towering machines. With ease, specialized rockets and energy weapons tore through the mech's armor like paper. The invaders could not understand how Earth was able to counter everything they threw at them. They had no backup plan, no alternate strategy. They had put everything into the initial invasion, and now it was unraveling with every failed attempt to regain control. The alien commanders in orbit were now watching with growing panic. Their forces were being picked apart, and they had no solution. They were being overwhelmed from all sides by the relentless assault of Earth's forces. They tried to call for reinforcements, but it was too late. Their fleet was already too far out of position to intervene. The world beneath them was no longer their battlefield. It was Earth's. On the ground, the biosoldiers moved from one pocket of resistance to the next, each one eliminating invaders with terrifying efficiency. The soldiers didn't pause to celebrate or admire their victories. They simply moved on to the next target. They were a force of nature, their focus unwavering, their speed unmatched. They had become the hammer that was breaking the alien forces apart piece by piece. With every invader that fell, the Empire's grip on Earth weakened. The invaders' morale shattered like glass. They had come expecting to conquer, but they were being humiliated. They had assumed their overwhelming numbers and superior technology would guarantee them victory, but instead they found themselves trapped on a world that fought back harder than they could ever have imagined. The tide of the battle was undeniable. Earth had taken the offensive, and the invaders' forces were retreating for the first time since the invasion had begun. The Imperial fleet in orbit began to scramble, their ships drifting further from Earth's surface. But it wasn't enough. Their retreat was not orderly, and their remaining forces were scattered. As the alien fleet began to disband, the invaders on the ground tried to regroup, but it was no use. They were no longer a cohesive fighting force. They were broken, isolated, and hunted down by the relentless advance of Earth's forces. Each step they took led them into a trap, a coordinated ambush that further depleted their ranks. The invaders were running out of places to hide. Humanity had not only survived the invasion, they had turned the tide completely, and the Empire's once feared offensive was now in a state of complete collapse. As the battle raged on, the invaders began to realize that they were not just losing, they were being utterly dismantled. Their forces had been scattered, and their technology rendered ineffective. Every time they tried to regroup, they were met with more coordinated resistance, more precise strikes from Earth's forces. Their communication networks were in disarray, their leadership was fractured, and the momentum was slipping away with each passing moment. From orbit, the alien commanders watched helplessly as the situation on the ground continued to worsen. Their fleet had been forced into a defensive position, and now their precious reinforcements were delayed. Their ships had become vulnerable targets for Earth's advanced weaponry, and even the slightest miscalculation on their part resulted in devastating losses they had come expecting to crush Earth within hours, but instead they were being beaten back and forced into retreat. Desperation set in among the Imperial leaders. They had overestimated their power and underestimated humanity's resilience and ingenuity. The first signs of panic started to surface among the invaders as they realized that they were on the verge of a full collapse. Their once confident forces were now filled with confusion and fear as they were hunted down by Earth's relentless assault. On the ground, the tide was fully turned. Earth's soldiers pressed forward with unwavering resolve. Each new advance pushed the invaders further back. Their movements were like a well-practiced symphony of destruction. With every step they took, the invaders' lines grew thinner and thinner, their ranks crumbling under the unyielding pressure from the humans who refused to relent. Earth's bioengineered soldiers continued to lead the charge, cutting down the alien invaders with ruthless efficiency. Their enhanced abilities allowed them to move faster than the eye could follow. Each strike was a blow to the Empire's resolve. Each victory for Earth was another crushing defeat for the invaders. With each passing minute, the alien forces seemed more and more like a shattered shell of what they once were. The invaders' leaders in orbit were frantically trying to salvage what they could. They ordered their fleet to prepare for an immediate evacuation, but it was too late. Earth's technology had already interfered with their escape plans. Every attempt to leave the planet's atmosphere was met with devastating resistance. Earth's new generation of EMP weapons disabled the invaders' fleet. With shocking precision, their ships were immobilized, their escape routes were blocked, and the invaders were left stranded. On the ground, the invaders began to retreat in panic. Their forces had been shattered, their command structure in chaos, and the humans were not giving them a moment to regroup. Every step they took was met with a new wave of Earth's soldiers. Drones in the air guided their movements, and ground troops advanced relentlessly, forcing the invaders further into disarray. In the midst of the chaos, the invaders' commanders issued a final order to retreat, but it was clear they had already lost. Their forces were spread too thin to mount a proper defense. They were surrounded and isolated. They had underestimated Earth, not just in terms of technology, but in terms of humanity's ability to fight for survival, and now the Empire was paying the price for their arrogance. Earth's forces knew it was only a matter of time before the invaders were completely eradicated. The alien invaders were no longer an invading force. They were broken fragments scattered across the planet, and even in space their once feared empire was crumbling from within. Earth had not only survived the invasion, they had turned the tables, and now the invaders faced the true consequence of their miscalculation. The collapse of the Imperial forces was imminent, and it was clear that the invaders would never again threaten Earth's sovereignty. As the invaders' forces crumbled under Earth's unrelenting advance, the remaining pockets of resistance began to falter one by one. The alien soldiers who had once been confident in their superiority now found themselves trapped in a losing battle. Their communications were jammed, their weapons malfunctioned, and the once formidable war machines they had deployed were no match for the combined force of humanity's ingenuity and strength. The invaders' leaders in orbit were no longer issuing orders. They had abandoned any hope of victory as their remaining forces on the ground were picked off by Earth's advancing forces with brutal efficiency. The Imperial fleet, which had once cast such a terrifying shadow over Earth, was now just a hollow shell of its former glory. Its ships, crippled by Earth's electromagnetic weapons, were drifting helplessly in space, unable to defend themselves from the relentless barrage of missiles and laser strikes coming from below. Earth's forces were not letting up. They had the invaders on the run, and they were determined to finish what had begun. They pressed forward, driving the alien invaders into the heart of their last defensive positions. They were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting to ensure that the invaders would never again be able to threaten their world. In the remaining strongholds of the invaders, their soldiers fought with desperation. They had no hope of victory, and yet they clung to the hope that somehow, somewhere, a miracle would happen. But Earth's forces were too well coordinated, too prepared, and too relentless to allow that hope to turn into reality. Meanwhile, in the invaders' command center, panic was at its peak. The commanders, now fully aware of their imminent defeat, tried to organize an escape plan, But the technology they relied on for such an escape was broken. The ships they had once relied on to take them back to their homeworld were nothing more than sitting targets vulnerable to Earth's weapons. Their last chance at salvation was slipping through their fingers. As the final pockets of invader resistance were crushed on the ground, Earth's forces turned their attention to the remaining enemy fleet in orbit. A new wave of advanced fighter jets launched from Earth's airbases, soaring into the sky with precision. As the fleet moved to engage the invaders in space, the Earth ships, equipped with cutting-edge technology and weapons, began systematically dismantling the once mighty Imperial fleet. The alien ships that had once seemed invincible now exploded in fireballs as Earth's fighters tore them apart one by one. The invaders had no way to respond. They were trapped between the relentless assault from below and the fighters above. The few remaining ships tried to flee, but they were picked off by Earth's orbital defense platforms. Before they could escape, the invaders were now surrounded in every direction, and with every passing moment their chances of survival dwindled on the ground. The final waves of invader soldiers were being wiped out. The bioengineered soldiers led the charge with unmatched precision, tearing through the remaining alien ranks, while Earth's regular military troops secured the perimeter, ensuring no invader was left standing. The empire that had once believed it could conquer Earth now faced utter annihilation. Their forces had been destroyed, their leaders had been humbled, their ships burned and shattered in the sky. There was no escape, no chance for redemption, and no mercy to be given. The invaders had come with the intention of taking Earth, but they had underestimated humanity's strength and resolve, and now they would pay the price. The final stand of the alien invaders was nothing more than a desperate attempt to delay the inevitable, and even that proved to be futile as Earth's forces closed in on their last survivors. The final remnants of the invaders' fleet were burning in space, their once imposing ships reduced to scattered debris and flaming wreckage. The skies above Earth had become a graveyard for the Empire's advanced warships, their systems fried and their weaponry useless against the unrelenting power of Earth's orbital defense platforms. Earth's fighters circled above, securing the skies, ensuring that no ship would escape the fate that had already claimed their comrades on the ground. The invaders' last strongholds had fallen. Earth's forces had swept through every last corner of the planet where the enemy had entrenched themselves, eradicating any remaining resistance. There were no more invaders to be found hiding in the shadows or clinging to hope, for they had all been either captured or destroyed. Humanity had fought back with everything it had, and now they stood victorious. The bioengineered soldiers, the secret weapon that had been humanity's ace in the hole, were still on the move, securing the final pockets of resistance with their deadly precision. They had become legends among their ranks, warriors whose purpose was to eliminate the threat without mercy, without hesitation. And as they moved through the last invader-held areas, the alien forces fell one by one, their hope vanishing as quickly as it had arrived. On the command ship, the invaders' once proud leadership had been reduced to shattered remnants. The last of their commanders, isolated and cornered, had no escape. They had thought Earth was just another planet to be crushed beneath their might, but they were wrong. And now they would answer for their arrogance in the face of the relentless human resolve. Their final moments would be spent staring down the barrel of Earth's justice. In the aftermath of the battle, as the smoke and dust of the conflict cleared, Earth stood tall, its people united in their triumph. The world had come together to defend their home, to protect their families, and to preserve the future they had built. The invaders had underestimated the strength of humanity's will, and now the consequences of that mistake were clear. News of the victory spread across the planet, and the celebration began. Humanity had proven that no force, no matter how advanced or overwhelming, could ever truly defeat them when they stood together, when they fought for their survival. But even in victory, there was no complacency. Earth's leaders knew that the universe was vast, and this invasion would not be the last time humanity faced a threat from beyond the stars. Yet, as they looked upon the remnants of the alien empire, they knew one thing for certain: humanity was ready for whatever came next, because they had proven their resilience, their ingenuity, and their unshakable resolve. The empire that had once sought to enslave Earth was no more, and humanity had shown the galaxy that they would not be cowed by any force that sought to destroy them. They had turned the tables in a matter of hours, dismantling an imperial force that had believed itself unstoppable, and in doing so, they had secured their place as masters of their own destiny. As the last of the invaders' ships drifted silently into the void, Earth stood victorious. The scars of battle already beginning to heal the people of the planet had shown the universe that they were not just survivors, but fighters, and now, with the threat gone, humanity could look toward the future with the certainty that nothing would ever break them again.